Get ready with me as I tell you a Christmas ghost story.
So the year was 2000, and of course, this was a time where they had landlines and cell phones. This girl says she was a teenager. She was maybe around 12. She was very close to her grandmother, and her grandmother had recently died. This was also around the time during the holidays, so it was a really hard time for both her and her family. In the first week of December, they heard the phone ring. This girl decides to answer the phone, and we'll call her Shelly. So she answers the phone, and she just hears this white noise. When they checked the caller ID, it was this number that had 00000. Shelly had no idea why such a weird number would pop up on the caller ID, but she assumed that it was maybe a company or a telemarketer trying to get a hold of her parents. So she decides to hang up the phone and go about decorating the Christmas trees. Weeks would go by, and yet again, one night they're having movie night with her parents. She was very close with her grandparents and her parents, might I add. So she's sitting there watching a movie, and all of a sudden, the phone rings. Now, Shelly was expecting a phone call from one of her classmates to talk about an assignment that they're working on. So she decides to answer the phone this time. And classically, not paying attention to the caller ID, she answers the phone. Again, she hears the white noise. She finally decides to say something. Hey, I think you have the wrong phone number. You keep calling. Don't know who this is. Please don't call back. And right as she was about to hang up the phone, she hears a very faint Shelly. Now, of course, she freaks out and hangs up the phone. She then rushes over to her parents and she tells them, hey, the phone number with a bunch of zeros, all zeros, calling us, and I think they're playing a prank on us. Immediately, her parents got worried and they're like, well, just don't answer it. Make sure that the next time this number calls, you let us know and we'll answer it. The rest of the night was very quiet, so she forgot about it and went on and they watched the movie and they had a good time. Not being able to sleep that night, she ended up having an early morning and not being fully rested. But alas, nothing stays quiet for a long time, and guess what happened? You know the drill. The phone went off again. This time, her parents were nowhere around. She's seeing it. She's letting it ring. It's ringing for a couple different moments. And she's hoping that her parents or someone picks up the phone because she just wants this person to stop calling. But the phone kept ringing and ringing and ringing. Finally, she decides that she just couldn't take it anymore and she answers the phone. So upon answering the phone, she says, okay, enough. Stop playing pranks. We don't want you guys calling. We don't want you calling anymore. Just stop. And then she hears the sound, followed by grandbaby. That sounded like her grandmother. She then looks at the caller ID and she sees the same 00 numbers. And just like that, whoever was on the other end of the line hung up. But don't go anywhere yet because this is where it gets really interesting. She runs downstairs looking for her mom, her parents, and tells them, Mom, Dad, guess what? Grandma just called me. She just called me. That number that's been calling us is Grandma. But her dad just scoffed, oh, honey, I know you miss grandmother, but that is just simply not possible. You've been staying up too late, you've been watching too many movies, we need to cut it back. She looks at her mom because obviously her dad doesn't believe her. So she's like, Mom, do you believe me? And her mom just gave her this hug and said, honey, you've been probably staying up too late. I know you're going through the grieving process, but we need to cut back on some of these movies. Days would go by, weeks would go by, and zero number stopped calling. Was she imagining things? One night before going to bed, she decided to just pray and talk to her grandmother. Grandma, God, if you can hear me, I just want to know, I want a sign. Was that really you who gave me a call, or was I just imagining things? Well, then she goes to bed and then has this very interesting dream. Her grandmother gives her this really big hug and she says to her, honey, that was me who gave you a call. And so this is a reminder that if you are intuitive and you want a message, it's always okay to ask a message and see what you receive in your dream.